Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today we have a new set of crazy stories about crazy people for you. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. No offense, honey, but I just don't think you're qualified. Back in my call center days, a frequent issue among our female techs, my team had about 5 to 9 on average out of about 200, was to get someone who would insist on being transferred to a male tech. This happened at least once a week. My friend Valerie got a customer who insisted that he speak with a man before even mentioning his problem, saying, "No offense, honey, but I just don't think you're qualified." If a customer ever requested to speak with another technician for whatever reason, the policy was to tell the customer to call back. When told this, the customer demanded to speak with a supervisor. So he did. He spoke with the only female supervisor, Liz, on the floor, who loved getting these kind of escalations, who asked the customer why specifically he felt the technician who transferred him wasn't qualified to assist him. Apparently, Liz had a habit of letting any female new hires know that if a customer wanted to speak to a supervisor because they demanded a man, they are free to let her know. It gets better. Liz had told me that normally these calls end with a very resigned and defeated customer being transferred back to a different and female tech to resolve the issue. But the customer that had escalated from Valerie refused to believe that another woman would be in any position of authority in our company and demanded to speak with Liz's boss. Liz told the customer that she was the final point of contact he was going to get, and if he didn't like it, he could call the corporate office. The customer assured Liz that he would do so and hung up. A week later, Liz finds out that the customer actually did call corporate to complain. However, unlike tech support, the customer interaction department of the corporate office was mostly women. When the VP of customer service got wind of this guy, she made sure that the few male members of her staff were suddenly unavailable to speak with him, and even spoke with the customer personally. Unfortunately, ignorance often knows no bounds, so the customer continued to call back and harass the staff, using choice language and vague threats until he finally managed to speak with a man, a representative of the company's legal department, who let the customer know that all calls with him had been recorded, that they considered any future attempt to contact them to be harassment, and he can expect a cease and desist letter in the near future. Liz said it was the first time she'd ever had the legal team follow up with anything she had done before. And our next story. You cost your company $7,000 in needless occupational exams and want to blame it on me? Sure. While we're at it, you're fired. I used to work for this company whose main job was to manage all the necessary medical exams and documents needed for you to comply with the current occupational health and safety laws, and also some specific labor laws. This is not in the US, so things are a bit different. I won't get into the technical aspect of things. There's this big company in town, not just any company, a world-class company that was born from a tool shed in someone's backyard back in the 1950s or 1940s. Anyways, they grew enough so as to buy another smaller company and expand into markets that are directly related to their main product. Think something big, like a bus. On this other company, there's one guy who I'll call LR. Now, LR seems to be a rather chillish guy sometimes, but he's never around when you need him. Keep in mind, when I say around, I mean at his desk, on his company's branch in a small town a few states away, and he takes a long time to reply to emails. Since I was working in the service provider relationship sector within the company, it was my and my boss's, this is a two-man department by the way, task to contact service providers, accredit new service providers, receive their workload, audit it, and if everything is okay, send their invoices to management for payment. Normally, this would be a piece of cake, with both of us being able to type in and audit most of the workload for our service providers within 2 to 3 days of them arriving, sometimes on the same day we received it. But this one wasn't that easy. You see, the company that LR works for has some 300 employees in their branch, and most of them work in the assembly line. I'm talking welders, vehicular electricians, mechanics, the whole package. Naturally, these types of jobs require several types of exams. Blood exams, hearing, heart, eyesight, and all of them also have to go through to a general practitioner. Oh, also the company keeps hiring more people every month too, so the amount of exams always goes up. This one special service provider usually costs us some 20 to 24 grand a month in exams, sometimes upwards of 30 grand. Most of the exams are actually pretty cheap due to the demand they got from us. Normally, their workload took at least a week for us to audit. That meant receiving it, typing in all the employee information, typing in all the exams and their results, double-checking everything is correctly registered in our database, and then auditing their invoice to make sure we're being charged the correct amount for every single exam. I'm talking 12 pages of an invoice, font size 7, so that was fun. In the beginning, this went smoothly, but LR kept making mistakes, filling out the forms the wrong way, not specifying what exams the employees had to have, filling in functions that did not exist in our database, sending the employees to have exams they did not need. All these mistakes meant we had to hound him anywhere from 7 to 10 days to get some feedback to complete the process, and sometimes he would take longer and only give us feedback when we were about to receive a whole new workload from this service provider. Me and the boss man did the best we could. We actually got along pretty well with the service provider. They did all they could to help us out, even doing some of the examinations in company for LR. But LR was less than happy. We had a lot of issues with him, mostly him saying that our service provider was to blame for all the mistakes and that the quality of their work was substandard. This meant that once every 2 to 3 months, we'd get the commercial sector on our butt because of the shoddy work the service provider was doing, and one time the boss man, our manager, and a commercial rep had to go to the company's headquarters here in town to deal with it. That time, we also had a meeting where both me and my boss had to sit down and explain to our manager why we were having so many issues with this one particular customer. This was a big deal, since they paid us several $1,000s a month in fees for the exams and for managing who needs to do what and when. Fast forward to early 2016. It's January. We received the workload from December 2015, and we imagine it's going to be very light since most companies usually slow down their activities during the holidays. Nope. LR wanted to speed up his job so he could probably slack off during January and maybe February as well, and he sent almost all of the branch's employees to have their exams. Here's the kicker. He once again filled out the forms the wrong way, as we expected. But this time, instead of it being just a few forms, it was almost all of them. When a form is filled out wrong, we contact the company about the specific mistake that was made and wait for feedback. But in this case, he never filled out any of the exams that any of the employees had to have. Standard procedure was that the service provider would in this case perform all of the exams for the specific function that were in the Occupational Health Control program. It was a flood of exams. We sent him an email letting him know we would be charging him a bit over $7,000 for periodical exams that were not needed since the previous ones were within the legal time span and thus not needed until they were no longer valid. Some of the exams had to be performed once every 2 years, 1 year, and a handful of them every 6 months. A month goes by, and we get a very angry commercial rep calling us, saying that LR's boss is pretty PO'd and will not pay. Mind you, he was right to be PO'd, since in that exact month it meant a 50% increase in their monthly pay, so their total came up to 21 grand. Apparently, when LR was confronted by his parent company's financial sector about the astronomical overcharge we were making, he blamed it on us, saying that we never explained to him how to properly fill out the authorization forms. Our manager and commercial rep wanted our heads on a silver platter because this was a huge client. Keeping them happy meant keeping their parent company happy. Make one of them unhappy and, well, this was basically the day of reckoning for us. The chance we'd been waiting to get back at LR for dodging our calls and emails, and for making more of the same mistakes every month, and generally trying to make it as hard as possible for me, my boss, and our service provider to do our jobs with as few hitches as possible. Luckily, we were prepared for this day. You see, we knew from day one that LR would give us trouble somewhere down the line, so we neatly saved all of our email exchanges. We sent his boss an email with a copy of every single email exchange we had with LR for 2 years regarding his mistakes filling out the authorization forms. We had a few email exchanges that were as long as a newspaper, detailing as much as humanly possible every single step in filling out the forms, contacting the service provider, and any other issues that may arise. When his boss saw this, he sent us a long apology email saying he would look into it and that within a day or two, he'd be withdrawing their complaint with our commercial staff and authorizing the payment of our invoice. That was quite a relief for us, and next month we had a much nicer person in LR's place. Sure, we still had problems with badly filled forms, but we didn't waste nearly as much time with emails and phone calls trying to sort it out, or constantly disproving LR's complaints about us and our service provider. Moral of the story, always leave a paper trail when dealing with a-holes. And our next story. Rude lady wants the best? All right. Reading through reminded me of a story that happened in my first month of working for a certain retailer that sells things. Anyway, for some background, I work in the parking lot, but I'm ambitious, so I wanted to learn to stock and things like that. So here I am, this nervous little guy in an apron who doesn't know his butt from his elbow, who gets stopped by a small lady and her son. From what I remembered, they worked for a contractor or something, as they were there to buy roofing items for someone other than themselves. They had a list, but it comprised of the most vague, crappy descriptions of basic items. I told her that she may need to gather more details by either calling the contractor or letting me know what she was working on. Her response? Well, you work here, shouldn't you know? Followed by her calling me a pizza-faced idiot. Immediately, I want revenge in the best way possible. I gather from context clues of what they were working on, more or less. Not sure what they needed the fire extinguisher for. I digress. She told me to find her the best things. If I found them on her list, some of which were literally just roofing tarp or bolts, she would ask what was the best for her. So for each and every item on the list, I would find the most expensive, and I do mean expensive items she needed. Of course, I didn't want to lose my job, so I just made sure that they were what she needed. I just amped up their prices by about 200%. And nobody even knew about it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.